Okay, we're back. The boys start the war. Chapter 6, the river on Caroline. I cannot believe she threw that cake over the bridge into the river. All right. Caroline and her sisters stood with their hands over their mouths, eyes wide like fried eggs. Oh, good grief, gasped Caroline. It really was a cake. The box below was sailing away. Enjoy, said Wally, grinning. Oh, and don't forget to return the plate. With that, the four Hatford boys turned around and went back towards their side of the river, though the youngest lingered just long enough for one last look in the water. Wow, said Peter. What are we going to do? Caroline cried to her sisters. Don't ask me, said Beth. You're the one that threw it in the river. But you didn't believe it was a cake either, Beth. You know you didn't. Look, guys, girls, we're in this together, Eddie agreed. I probably would have actually taken the box and dumped it over their heads. I suppose we could always say we ate it, Caroline mused, watching the whipped cream frosting leave a trail in the wake. And then she cried suddenly, oh no, the plate. We've got to return the plate. The box seemed to be floating towards the Malloy's side of the river. The girls ran back across the bridge and down the bank to the water's edge. There it is, Eddie said. She looked at Caroline. Go get it. That's not fair. We're in this together, you said. Oh, good grief. Okay, we'll all go in, decided Eddie. And the girls took off their shoes and socks and rolled up their jeans. The water didn't seem as warm as it had been a week ago when Caroline slid off the sheet and disappeared into the muddy brown of the Buckman River. But now it was almost 6 in the evening. August had become September, and that little change had made all the difference in the temperature of the water. The riverbed was rocky in places, and where it was bare, the thick mud oozed up between Caroline's toes. Now and then something tickled her ankles as she waded out towards the center, and she did not even like to think what it might be. The box had stopped at a pile of brush in the river, but one corner appeared to be sinking. Hurry, Caroline, yelled Beth, plodding along behind. Caroline took a deep breath and waded in up to her waist. The more waterlogged her jeans became, the heavier they felt, and the harder it was to walk. Hurry, Beth screeched again. Caroline took a giant step forward this time, but her foot slipped on the slimy bottom. The last thing she saw before the water rushed over her was the white box rising up over the debris with the current and sailing on downstream. Glub, glub, glub. Water filled her ears, her nose, clouded her eyes. Gasping, she reared up, all of her clothes heavy now. Before she could see anything, however, she could hear shrieks of laughter from the opposite bank. And knew that the Hatford boys had been watching all along. Oh, we're going to get them, Eddie said. Don't pay any attention to them. Just get the plate, said Eddie. But the box was moving faster than the girls could keep up. And what's more, it seemed to be sinking slowly at the same time. More hoots and hollers from the boys. Caroline began to swim. Caroline Lenore, she told herself, you're an actress. And actresses don't pay attention to distractions. Make this your greatest performance yet. And so, as she swam towards the center of the Buckman River, where she had last seen the box, she pretended that she was a young mother swimming desperately to rescue her small child before he disappeared forever beneath the waves. Caroline tried to concentrate on her face. She would have a look of agonized terror, she decided, opening her eyes wide, teeth frozen behind half-parted lips, little gasps coming from her throat. She could see the Hatford boys back on the far bank watching. The camera would move in for a close-up of her face, and just then she would close her eyes and plunge. Caroline went tail up like a duck diving beneath the surface, her arms outstretched, feeling for the box or the china plate. Once she thought she touched it, but it was only a slimy moss of a rock. There it goes, shouted Beth, pointing farther downstream as Caroline surfaced. Oh my gosh, it's headed for the rocks. Her baby, she thought, her poor baby. The camera is still rolling in her head. Caroline plunged forward again, arms battling the water as she stroked. Faster, faster. Her only child, she thought. In another minute, he would be dashed against the rocks. Out of the corner of her eyes, she could see the Hatford boys going home. They weren't even going to stay till the end. Oh well, a good actress plays her part whether or not the entire theater is empty. On she swam. The box came apart just before the largest rock in the river came into view. She could see the plate spilling out, sinking, and she lunged. She had it. She had found her baby. She had rescued him. Her heart's delight. Holding the plate against her chest, Caroline crawled up on the rock and swooned. Oh, for Pete's sakes, Caroline, cut the comedy, Eddie yelled, swimming toward her. She and Beth reached the rock and climbed up beside Caroline, who collapsed dramatically against them, going limp in their arms. Caroline, knock it off, Eddie said sternly. Is the plate okay? The mood was broken. The show was over. Caroline blinked, her hair streaming water into her eyes, and examined the plate. It still had a sticker on the bottom, as though it were good as new. And there was a dainty scallop design around the edge, the kind of plate her mother used for cookies at Christmas, or served little sandwiches on when she entertained the faculty wives. Miraculously, it was not broken. Uh-oh. But there was a fine hairline crack in the surface. It's okay, I guess, she told Eddie. Eddie and Beth slipped into the water again, and Caroline reluctantly followed, swimming back to the bank behind her sisters. What are we going to tell Mom? Beth asked, as they put on their socks and sneakers. What will we say about the cake? Never mind the cake. What will we tell her about us? Said Eddie. Look at us. We're soaked through to the skin. Dinner at the Malloys was almost never before 7, because Coach Malloy had football practice until 6:30 every evening in the fall. The girls had just time enough to rush upstairs, shower, and change before they saw his car making its way down Island Avenue, to park at last in the clearing between the house and the garage. He slid into his chair at the table. You girls look as though you've been swimming, was the first thing that came out of his mouth. Ooh, in that river? Asked Mother, placing a roast before them. Oh, no, I just took a shower, said Beth, which was the honest truth. She wasn't lying. Me too, said Eddie. Huh, well, that's where I'm heading after dinner, said their father. I don't know if I've got a team or not. Jean, they all seem pretty green to me. But I'll tell you one thing, I'm going to make them one by the 1st of October. Of course you will, honey, said Mrs. Malloy. You know, I sort of like living in a small town like this. I think it stinks, said Eddie, reaching for the pepper. Well, why, Edith Ann? Well, because it's a town full of dumb boys. That's why. And I pitched better than any of the boys at recess today, but I still have to try out for the baseball team. Well, it's only fair, said her father. Have you met any of the neighbors? I have, said Miss Malloy. The people next door are so friendly. And I met our mailman for the first time, Mr. Hatford. He says he lives across the river and his wife works at Gandy's Hardware. By and by, I imagine we'll meet them all. Caroline looked at Beth and Eddie and said nothing. But after dinner, when Mother went upstairs to write some letters and the girls were on kitchen duty, she said, You know what we have to do, don't you? We have to return the plate. Then we've got to make sure the mother's there when we ring the doorbell. In fact, we're going to ask to talk to her, said Caroline. Eddie went to the telephone in the hall and looked up the number for Grady's hardware store, and then dialed it. Yes. What time do y'all close? She asked. 9 o'clock, a man told her. Eddie hung up and looked at the others. We leave here at 9:15, and we better figure out exactly what we're going to say. Right, said Caroline. Beth, you write the script, and we'll practice it a couple of times first. At 9:15, the girls crossed the bridge in the moonlight, the plate securely in Edie's hands. It was a beautiful night, almost too lovely to be angry at anyone, Caroline thought. Beth must have felt the same way, because halfway over she said, Wait, why do you suppose the Hatford boys hate us so much? Oh, I don't think they hate us, said Caroline. I'll bet they're just mad that the Bensons moved away and we've moved in. I mean, the Bensons do have all boys. Well, too bad, said Eddie. I didn't ask to come here any more than they wanted me to. I suppose we could just ring the doorbell and say, Look, let's bury the hatchet and all be friends, said Beth. The girls looked at each other and smiled a little. Nah, said Eddie. This is a lot more fun. The porch light was still on when the Malloy girls went up the steps to the Hatford's large porch, which wrapped around 3 sides of the house. Through the curtains, they could see Mr. Hatford stretched out on the couch watching TV and a boy somewhere in the background who seemed to be doing his homework at the dining room table. Caroline pressed the doorbell. It chimed. Footsteps. The door opened, and there was Wally Hatford. His eyes wide. "Who is it, Wally?" came a woman's voice in the background. It's, who is it? A woman appeared, and Wally disappeared as though the floor had opened up and swallowed him. "Hello, Mrs. Hatford," Caroline said sweetly. "We've come to return your cake plate." "Oh my goodness, so soon? There was no hurry, girls." "Oh, it was delicious. It was absolutely wonderful. Chocolate is my favorite. Chocolate cake with whipped cream frosting. Oh my goodness, it was so good." "Well, it's an old recipe, but it always works for me. It's chocolate chiffon, to be exact." Mrs. Hatford looked pleased. "Right, chocolate chiffon," said Eddie. "Thanks a lot." "We want our neighbors to feel welcome," Mrs. Hatford told her. "If there's anything at all we can do to help you get settled in, we'd be glad to. The boys, too." An actress, Caroline knew, had to be ready to ad-lib when the occasion arose. And that occasion was now. "Oh, I know there would be lots of things Dad could use the boys for, seeing as how, he only has girls," Caroline said. "Well, you just let us know any chores at all," said Miss Hatford. "Call us anytime and I'll send them right over." Oh, okay, I'm going to go ahead and read chapter 7. I'll come back on in a minute and we will move on to chapter 7. All right, it's called Free for All. Oh no, what's going to happen next?